The third overdraft notice from Maeve's bank arrived in my mailbox this morning. I stood there in my bathrobe, holding the envelope, and wondered, not for the first time, what it would feel like to just disappear. My name is Claire, and I'm the responsible sister. The one who gets the calls at 2 a.m. when Maeve's card is declined. The one who knows exactly how much money our parents have in their retirement account because I'm the one who set it up. The human safety net for a family that treats stability like it's my superpower instead of my prison. Claire? Claire, are you there? Maeve's voice crackled through my phone speaker. I really need your help. The bank, they're being totally unreasonable. Stop! I pressed my fingers against my temples. Just how much this time? Only 800. I swear I'll pay you back by next month, like the 600 from January or the 1,000 from Christmas. The words came out sharper than I intended. Silence on the line. Then, in a smaller voice, You're mad at me. I'm not mad. I was exhausted. I'll transfer it. But Maeve, this has to stop. You're the best. I love you so much. Hey, did Mum tell you I might be getting that job at the salon? I ended the call and opened my banking app. $800. That's 2 weeks of groceries, or 1/3 of what I needed to reach my down payment goal. The number I'd been inching toward for 3 years, watching it grow in my savings account like a fragile plant. Later that night, I sat in my tiny apartment, laptop balanced on my knees. Reddit glowed on the screen as I typed. Sometimes I daydream about running away from my family. The words poured out. Years of being the responsible one, of watching my sister burn through money and relationships while our parents cleaned up her messes with my savings account. My phone buzzed. Mum, honey, we need to talk about Maeve, she said, her voice doing that thing where she tries to sound casual, but I can hear the tension underneath. What's she done now? It's complicated. Your father and I think it would be better to discuss this in person. Can you come over tomorrow night? My stomach dropped. How bad? 42,000 in credit card debt. Mum's voice cracked. But we have a plan. We've been thinking about it, and since you're so good with money, the rest of her words faded into static. $42,000. Almost exactly what I'd saved for my down payment. Claire, are you listening? Yeah, Mum, I'm here. My voice sounded far away, even to myself. Good, because we really need you to be there for your sister right now. You know how she struggles, and you've always been so responsible, so good at saving. I stared at my laptop screen, at the blinking cursor under my Reddit post. Someone had already commented, "You don't owe your family your entire life." Claire, Mum pressed, "You'll help, won't you? It's better this way. She needs it more than you do right now. You're good at saving. You can always start over." The words hit me like a physical blow. Start over. 3 years of overtime shifts, of saying no to vacations, of living in this cramped apartment with the leaky faucet, all of it erased because Maeve needed another bailout. Of course, I heard myself say. I'll look at the numbers tomorrow. After hanging up, I opened my banking app again. Stared at my savings balance. $43,875.20. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed for, and they expected me to hand it over like it meant nothing. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone and opened my sister's Instagram. There she was, posted 2 days ago, showing off a new designer bag. Last week, pictures from a weekend trip to Miami. All while racking up debt she expected me to pay off. I clicked back to Reddit, where more comments had appeared under my post. One caught my eye. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is let people face the consequences of their own actions. For the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. A crack in the foundation of responsibility I'd built my life on. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I thought about consequences, about karma, about what would happen if, just once, I chose myself first. I opened a new tab and searched how to open a separate checking account. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest actions, and sometimes revenge looks exactly like freedom. I sat at my parents' kitchen table, the same one where I'd done my homework 20 years ago, watching Mum stir her coffee with mechanical precision. 3 turns clockwise, always 3. Some things never change. We've worked it all out, she said, sliding a folder across the table. Your father's prepared all the transfer forms. It's just a matter of moving the money. I opened the folder, scanning documents I'd seen 1,000 times in my accounting job. My hands were steady, even as my stomach churned. Tell me again how this happened. Oh, honey, you know how these things snowball. Mum waved her hand dismissively. A few emergency expenses, some necessary purchases, like the Gucci bag she posted on Instagram last week. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Dad cleared his throat from his position by the sink. Claire, don't be petty. Your sister is going through a difficult time. When isn't she? I muttered, but they ignored me. It's all family money anyway, Mum said, reaching across to pat my hand. That's what savings are for. Helping family. Remember when you were 16 and crashed the car? We helped you then. The memory hit me like a slap. I paid back every cent with interest, and that was $2,000, not $42,000. The amount doesn't matter, Mum insisted. What matters is we're family. We help each other. I flipped through the transfer forms, remembering the night I'd paid off their second mortgage after Maeve's first major credit card disaster. I'd been 24, emptying my 401k while they all slept, believing I was protecting them. Now I wondered who had been protecting me. Where is Maeve, anyway? I asked, knowing the answer. She's very upset, Mum said quickly. This is all so overwhelming for her. She's staying with a friend. Translation. She couldn't face me while taking my money. My phone buzzed. An email from Dad with the bank routing information. Just send it through tomorrow at work, he said. The sooner we handle this, the better. I stood up, tucking the folder into my bag. I'll take care of it. Mum hugged me, her perfume overwhelming. You're such a good daughter, Claire. We're so lucky to have you. I didn't hug back. Yeah, lucky. The drive home felt longer than usual. I pulled into my apartment complex, but instead of going upstairs, I knocked on my landlord's door. Prudence answered, still in her gardening clothes. Claire, everything okay? I need to ask you something. I swallowed hard. What's the earliest I could give 30 days' notice? Her eyes narrowed. Planning to leave us? Maybe. I'm not sure yet. I just need to know my options. Prudence studied me for a long moment. First of the month, she said finally. But Claire, whatever you're planning, be sure, really sure. Back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and started making lists. Account numbers, passwords, joint investments, utility accounts, every financial thread that connected me to my family. My phone buzzed again. A text from Maeve. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're literally saving my life. Love you, sis. I stared at the heart emoji, remembering another night 5 years ago. I'd been in the emergency room with a kidney infection, delirious with fever. I'd called Maeve 3 times, begging her to come. She was too busy. I saw her party photos on Facebook the next day. Opening my banking app, I began the process of opening a new account. Different bank, different branch. No connection to any existing accounts. Then I started documenting everything. Screenshots of transfer histories, spreadsheets of loans paid, receipts for bills covered. A new email arrived from Dad. Don't forget, Transfer first thing tomorrow. Your mother's worried sick about this whole situation. I typed back, "Don't worry. Everything will be taken care of by 9 a.m. It wasn't exactly a lie. By 9 a.m. tomorrow, everything would indeed be taken care of. Just not in the way they expected. I looked around my small apartment, at the life I'd built while supporting everyone else's. The down payment I'd saved wasn't just money, it was freedom. My freedom. And maybe it was time to use it for exactly that. Opening my phone, I pulled up Prudence's contact. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing, "I'd like to give my 30 days notice, starting 1st of next month." Her reply came quickly. "Thought you might. Forms are ready whenever you are." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Tomorrow would change everything. And for once, I was ready for change. The office was quiet at 7 a.m. as I methodically worked through my checklist. Cancel joint credit card with Maeve. Done. Remove myself as guarantor from parents' accounts. Done. Update mail forwarding. Done. Each click of my mouse felt like breaking a chain. "You're here early." I jumped. Gideon from the cubicle next to mine stood in the doorway, holding 2 coffee cups. "Couldn't sleep," I said, minimizing my screens. "What's your excuse?" He set one of the coffees on my desk. "Quarter-end reports, but you've been here early all week. Everything okay?" "Just busy." I took a sip of the coffee. Perfect amount of cream. He'd noticed how I took it. "Right." He didn't sound convinced. "You know, if you need to talk..." "I don't." The words came out sharper than intended. "But thanks for the coffee." He nodded and retreated to his desk. I felt a twinge of guilt. Gideon had always been kind to me, but I couldn't risk anyone knowing what I was about to do. Opening my bottom drawer, I pulled out a flash drive. My insurance policy. Years of receipts, transfer records, loan documents, every dollar I'd given them, every bill I'd paid, every financial rescue I'd mounted. I'd spent weeks scanning and organising it all. So when my phone buzzed, "Mum, just checking, you're handling the transfer this morning, right?" "Everything's in motion," I texted back. Not a lie. I pulled up the joint investment account I shared with my parents, the one they'd insisted I manage because I was so good with money. With a few clicks, I transferred my portion to my new, separate account. Next came the utility accounts, all in my name, all paid from my account for years. Time to update the billing information. "You missed a spot." I nearly jumped out of my skin. Gideon again, pointing at my screen. "What?" "The beneficiary designation on your 401k. If you're cutting financial ties, you'll want to change that too." My blood ran cold. "How did you..." "I've been watching you all week," he said quietly. "The new accounts, the transfers, the documentation. I'm not judging. Sometimes family is toxic." "I'm not..." I started to deny it, then stopped. "How much have you seen?" "Enough to know you're being thorough. But you missed the 401k beneficiaries. And your health insurance. Maeve's still listed as your emergency contact." I stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" He shrugged. "Because I've been where you are. And because you look like you haven't slept in days." My eyes burned. He wasn't wrong. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded once and returned to his desk. I updated my beneficiaries and emergency contacts, then moved on to the final phase. My hand shook as I composed the email to my parents' creditors, removing myself as contact person and financial guarantor. No more midnight calls about missed payments. No more using my good credit as their safety net. Another text from Mum. "Maeve's so excited to have this settled. We're thinking of celebrating tonight." I pictured them planning a dinner with my money they didn't yet realise they wouldn't be getting. My stomach churned. Opening my email, I crafted one final message. "Transfer will process by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Everything's taken care of." Mum's reply was instant. You're an angel. We knew we could count on you. Maeve sent a string of heart emojis. I leaned back in my chair, watching the clock tick toward 9 a.m. In my new apartment across town, my boxes were already packed. The lease was signed. My new phone number was activated. All my important documents were in a safety deposit box only I could access. "Hey," Gideon's voice was soft. "You okay?" I realised I was crying. "No, but I will be. Want to get lunch later? After everything?" I looked at him, looked at him for the first time. He had kind eyes. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." My phone buzzed one last time. "Dad, your mother's worried the transfer hasn't shown up yet." I turned off my phone and slipped it into my drawer. By now, they'd be checking their accounts, waiting for the money. The panic would start soon. The calls would flood in. The realization would hit them. I wasn't fixing this mess. Not this time. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. "It's done," I whispered to myself. It's finally done. The office began to fill with other employees. Normal morning chatter, coffee runs, regular life continuing while my world shifted on its axis. I opened my web browser and pulled up apartment listings. Time to start thinking about furniture for my new place. Time to start thinking about myself. The first voicemail came at 9:07 a.m. "Claire, the money hasn't shown up yet. Call me back immediately." Mum's voice was tight, controlled. 9:12. "Claire, this isn't funny. We need that transfer now." 9:15 a.m. "Your sister is having a panic attack. How could you do this to her?" I sat at my desk, sipping tea, listening to the messages pile up through my blocked numbers. Each one more desperate than the last. The office hummed with normal activity, while my phone silently exploded. Gideon appeared with another coffee. "How's it going?" "They're melting down." I showed him my email. 37 new messages in the last hour. Mum's threatening to call the police. For what? Not giving them your money? For stealing from them? She thinks I hacked their accounts. I couldn't help but laugh. I just removed myself from them. My computer pinged. A new email from Maeve. "OMG, did someone hack you? My card just got declined and the bank says the account is closed. Call me!" "She thinks she's been scammed," I told Gideon. "Hasn't figured out yet that I'm the scammer." "How long are you going to let them spiral?" "Until they stop expecting me to fix everything." The elevator dinged. Through the glass walls of our office, I saw Maeve storm in, her designer bag swinging wildly. My stomach dropped. "Where is she?" she screamed at the receptionist. "Where's my sister?" Security was already moving. I stayed at my desk watching. "Mum, you need to calm down," the guard said. "Don't tell me to calm down. She stole from me. Claire, I know you're in here." I stood up slowly, walked to the office entrance. Everyone was staring. "You need to leave," I said quietly. "Leave? Leave? You destroyed everything. The accounts are empty. Mum's crying. What did you do?" "I didn't take anything that wasn't mine." My voice was steady. "The accounts aren't empty. They just don't have access to my money anymore." "Your money?" She laughed hysterically. "It's family money. That's what Mum always said." "Not anymore." The security guard stepped between us. "Mum, if you don't leave voluntarily, we'll call the police." "Go ahead," Maeve shrieked. "Call them. She's the criminal." "The only crime," I said, "is how long I let you all use me." Something in my voice made her stop. "Really look at me." You did this on purpose?" "Yes." But why? We're family." "Family doesn't drain you dry. Family doesn't expect you to sacrifice everything. Family doesn't treat you like an ATM." Tears streamed down her face. I needed that money. No, you needed consequences. The security guard took her arm. Time to go. You'll regret this, she screamed as they led her out. Mum and Dad will never forgive you. I know, I said softly. That's the point. The office was dead silent. I turned to face my co-workers, their shocked expressions. Show's over, I announced. Back to work. I returned to my desk, hands shaking slightly. Gideon appeared with a water bottle. That was intense, he said. That was just the beginning. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Dad, using Mum's phone. Your mother is having chest pains. If anything happens to her, it's on you. I blocked that number too. Another email from Maeve. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed this family. I never want to see you again. I typed back 3 words. As you wish. Then I opened my bottom drawer, pulled out the flash drive and plugged it in. Time to organise the evidence, just in case they tried anything legal. The spreadsheet of financial transactions told the story. 157,800 interest receipted to 43 over 10 years. That's what family had cost me. Claire? My supervisor stood at my desk. Can we talk? I followed her to her office, already knowing what was coming. We can't have scenes like that in the workplace, she began. It won't happen again, I assured her. I've blocked all contact. She studied me. Are you okay? No. I surprised myself with the honesty. But I will be. Back at my desk, I found a sticky note from Gideon. Lunch? You look like you could use a friend. I smiled slightly, stuck the note in my planner. Maybe I could. My email pinged one final time. Mum, you don't belong in this family anymore. For the first time, those words didn't hurt. They felt like freedom. I typed back, You're right, I don't. Then I turned back to my work, letting the silence of my phone wash over me like peace. The pounding on my apartment door started at 6 a.m. I sat on my couch, coffee in hand, listening to Mum's voice through the wood. Claire, Elizabeth, I know you're in there. Open this door right now. I took another sip of coffee. The walls in this building were thin. My neighbours would hear everything. Good thing I'd already given notice. Your father is sick with worry. Is that what you wanted? To make us all sick? My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbour across the hall. Want me to call the cops? Not yet, I typed back. But thanks. I raised you better than this. Mum's voice cracked. After everything we've done for you, I nearly choked on my coffee. Everything they'd done for me? The memories flooded back. Working 2 jobs through college while Maeve got a free ride, emptying my savings to cover their second mortgage, cancelling my vacation to bail Maeve out of jail after her DUI. The pounding stopped, then softer. Please, honey, just talk to us. I stayed silent. Fine. Her voice turned cold. Have it your way. Footsteps retreated down the hallway. I waited 10 minutes before opening my door to retrieve the mail. At work, Gideon was already at my desk. You look terrible. Thanks. Mum showed up at my apartment this morning. Did you talk to her? No, but the whole building heard her talk to me. I slumped into my chair. HR wants to see me at 10. Because of Maeve's scene yesterday? I nodded. Apparently, she's been calling the office multiple times. Want me to come with you? To HR? Why would you? Because you look like you're about to break, and someone should have your back. The sincerity in his voice made my throat tight. I'm fine. No, you're not, and that's okay. Before I could respond, my email pinged. A message from an unfamiliar address made my blood run cold. Hey, Claire Bear. Long time no see. Heard you're having family troubles. Maybe we should talk about some of Maeve's creative accounting. Hank, Maeve's ex, the one who'd introduced her to credit card fraud. "What's wrong?" Gideon asked. "You've gone pale." I showed him the email. Maeve's ex, he's not a good person. Sounds like a threat. It is. I rubbed my temples. Maeve must have told him about the money. "Ms. Roberts?" HR's assistant appeared. "They're ready for you." The meeting was exactly as uncomfortable as I'd expected. Yes, my sister had been causing disruptions. No, I couldn't control her actions. Yes, I understood this was a professional environment. "We're concerned," the HR director said, "about the impact on workplace harmony." "I understand," I replied. "I've blocked all contact. It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't." Back at my desk, 3 more emails from Hank waited, each more suggestive than the last. "I know things about your sister's finances that could cause real problems. Wonder what the police would think about certain transactions. Let's meet, talk about family loyalty." "You should report him," Gideon said, reading over my shoulder. "And say what? That my sister's sketchy ex is threatening me because I won't give her money?" "Yes, exactly that." My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Coffee shop on 5th, 3 p.m, come alone. H. "Don't go," Gideon said immediately. "I have to. If he knows something about Maeve's accounts that could blow back on me, then let me come with you." He said alone. "Since when do you follow orders from criminals?" I almost smiled. Almost. At 2:55 p.m, I walked into the coffee shop. Hank sat in the corner, looking exactly as sleazy as I remembered. Gideon positioned himself at a table near the door, pretending to work on his laptop. "Claire Bear," Hank smiled. "Sit down. Let's chat about family. Let's chat about blackmail instead." His smile didn't waver. "Strong word, I prefer negotiation." "Nothing to negotiate. Whatever Maeve did with her accounts, it's not my problem anymore." "No." He leaned forward. "What if I told you she used your social security number for some of those accounts?" My stomach dropped. "You're lying." "Want to bet your credit score on that?" He slid a paper across the table. "Let's talk numbers." I looked at the figure he'd written, looked at his smirking face, and made a decision. "No," I said, standing up. "Let's talk consequences instead." His smile finally faltered. "What?" "Check your email in an hour, and Hank, never contact me again." I walked out, Gideon falling into step beside me. "What now?" he asked. "Now," I said, pulling out my phone to keep. "I call my lawyer." The diner's fluorescent lights made everyone look sickly. Maeve sat across from me, Hank hovering behind her like a shadow. My lawyer's business card burned in my pocket, a silent reminder that I held the power now. "You're really going to do this?" Maeve asked, her mascara already smudging. "You're going to let them arrest me?" "I'm not letting them do anything," I said, stirring my coffee. "Your choices, your consequences." "But I'm your sister, and I'm done being your human shield." I pulled out a folder. "Want to explain these credit card applications? The ones with my social security number?" Hank shifted uncomfortably. Maeve's face went white. That's not what it looks like." "Identity theft is exactly what it looks like." I laid out the documents my lawyer had pulled. 5 cards, $42,000, my social security number. I was desperate. Tears started falling. "You wouldn't help me. I helped you for 10 years. I worked overtime, cancelled vacations, lived in a cramped apartment so you could have whatever you wanted." "You're just jealous," she spat. "You've always been jealous that Mum and Dad love me more." The words should have hurt. Instead, I laughed. "Love you more? They enabled you more. There's a difference." Hank finally spoke up. "Look, we can work something out. Maybe a payment plan. There's already a plan, I cut him off. The police are very interested in both of you, especially your history of targeting vulnerable women for financial scams, Hank. His face darkened. You don't want to threaten me. No. I pulled out my phone, showed them the screen. I've been recording this entire conversation, and I have copies of everything, the fraudulent applications, the transfer histories, even those texts where you tried to blackmail me. Maeve grabbed Hank's arm. You said she wouldn't have proof. Shut up, he hissed. Here's what's going to happen, I said, closing the folder. You're both going to leave. Never contact me again. Never come to my workplace. Never touch my finances. Or what? Hank challenged. Or I press charges. Identity theft, fraud, blackmail. Take your pick. My lawyer has the paperwork ready. You'd send your own sister to jail? Maeve whispered. You were willing to destroy my credit score. Seems fair. She started sobbing. The waitress glanced over, concerned. Everything's fine, I called out. Then, lower. Isn't it, Maeve? I hate you, she choked out. No, you hate that I stopped playing by your rules. I stood up, dropping cash for my coffee. Goodbye, Maeve. Good luck with the police investigation. Hank grabbed my arm. You think you're so clever. Remove your hand, I said quietly, or I'll scream. There are witnesses, cameras, and a police station 2 blocks away. Your choice. He let go like I'd burned him. One more thing, I added, reaching the door. I'm not the only one you've tried to scam. Remember Sarah from the bank? Jessica from the loan office? They're very interested in testifying. The colour drained from his face. You ruined everything, Maeve sobbed. No, I looked at her one last time. I just stopped letting you ruin me. Outside, the evening air felt clean, fresh. My phone buzzed. A text from Gideon. All okay? Better than okay, I replied. Another message popped up, this one from Mum. Maeve just called us hysterical. What have you done? I typed back. Ask her about the credit card fraud. Ask her about Hank's scams. Or, better yet, ask yourselves why you never did. Then I blocked their number too. Walking home, I passed a real estate office. In the window, a photo of a small townhouse caught my eye. Nothing fancy, just a modest home with a small garden. But it would be mine. No family drama, no financial abuse, no midnight crisis calls. My phone rang, my lawyer. They took the bait, she said. Hank's lawyer reached out. They want to deal. And Maeve? The evidence is clear. She can cooperate or face charges. I watched my reflection in the real estate window. The woman staring back looked tired, but strong. Give them 24 hours to decide, I said. Then we move forward. You're sure about this? They're your family. No, I said, turning away from the window. They're people who used to control me. There's a difference. I hung up and started walking again, faster now. Each step felt lighter, each breath clearer. Behind me, the sun was setting on my old life. Ahead, the street stretched out like possibilities. For the first time in forever, I was free to choose which way to go. The legal notice arrived on a Tuesday morning. I stared at the certified letter, my hand shaking as I read the words. Notice of civil action. My parents had listed me as a co-debtor on a new loan, one I'd never signed for. They'd forged my signature using our shared history of joint accounts as proof of my involvement. They can't do this, Gideon said, reading over my shoulder in the break room. It's fraud. They think they can bully me back into line. My voice cracked. They're trying to force me to help with Maeve's debt. Call your lawyer now. I did. She answered on the first ring. They're desperate, she said after I explained. This is good news. Good news? They're trying to steal my identity. No, They're providing evidence of a pattern of financial abuse. This helps our case. My desk phone lit up. The receptionist's voice was apologetic. Your father's here. Don't, Gideon said, but I was already standing. Dad looked older, standing in the lobby. Defeated. Claire, please. Your mother's not sleeping. Maeve's talking about moving across the country. We just want our family back. The family where I pay for everything and get nothing in return? That's not fair. No, what's not fair is forging my signature on loan documents. I held up the notice. Did you really think I wouldn't fight back? We're scared, he admitted. The bank's threatening foreclosure. Maeve's cards are all frozen. Your mother's blood pressure. Stop. My voice was steel. I'm not responsible for fixing your lives anymore. But we're your parents. Parents protect their children. They don't exploit them. His face hardened. Your mother was right. You've changed. Yes, I have. Back at my desk, I emailed my lawyer the security footage of Dad's visit. More evidence. My phone buzzed. A TikTok notification. Maeve had posted a video. My stomach dropped as I watched. My sister abandoned our family, her tearful face declared. Left us drowning in debt. Don't trust someone just because they're blood. Shuck toxic family, dust betrayal. The comments were flooding in. Stay strong. Family should help family. What a horrible sister. Gideon appeared with coffee. Social media doesn't matter. The law does. They're making me the villain. No, they're showing everyone exactly why you left. My lawyer called again. We've got them. The loan application, the forged signature, Maeve's social media posts admitting to debt. It's all evidence. Want to press charges? I thought about Mum's sleepless nights, Dad's defeated posture, Maeve's tears. Yes, I whispered. Send the cease and desist. File the police report. It'll get ugly. It already is. That night, alone in my apartment, the email started. Mum, the police came. Is this what you wanted? To destroy us? Dad, your mother's in the hospital. Stress attack? Are you happy now? Maeve, they're saying I could go to jail. I hope you rot. I forwarded each one to my lawyer without reading further. Then I opened Reddit, found my original post from weeks ago. Sometimes I daydream about running away from my family. The comments had multiplied. Update us. Stay strong. You're inspiring others to break free. I started typing. Update. I didn't run away. I stood my ground. Gideon texted. You okay? No, I replied honestly. But I will be. Want company? I make decent pasta. I stared at the message. In the midst of all this darkness, someone was offering light. Yes, I typed back. I'd like that. My phone lit up one final time. A message from Mum. No matter how far you run, blood is blood. That doesn't change. You'll regret this eventually. When you're alone and need family, remember who you abandoned. I thought about Gideon bringing me coffee, about my lawyer's fierce protection, about Prudence checking on me daily, about the Reddit strangers cheering me on. You're right, I wrote back. Blood is blood. But family? Family is who lifts you up, not who drags you down. I'm not alone, I'm free. Then I blocked her number, the last one, and started making dinner. Tonight, I'd have pasta with a friend. Tomorrow, I'd face whatever came next. The police report was filed. The cease and desist was sent. The evidence was documented. For the first time in my life, I wasn't fixing their mess. I was fixing mine. The keys to my new townhouse felt heavy in my hand. Prudence stood beside me on the front step, holding a potted plant, a housewarming gift. Ready? She asked. I turned the key. The door swung open to empty rooms full of possibility. My possibilities. It's smaller than your parents' place, Prudence noted. But it's mine. I set down the box I was carrying. Every inch of it. My phone buzzed. A news alert. I'd set up notifications for certain names. There it was. Local businessmen arrested for financial fraud. Hank's mugshot stared back at me. Good, Prudence said, reading over my shoulder. One down. Maeve took a plea deal, I told her. Community service, financial counselling, and she has to pay everything back. And your parents? The cease and desist worked. They're leaving me alone. Moving boxes lined the hallway, each one labelled in Gideon's neat handwriting. He'd insisted on helping organise the move, turning chaos into order, just like he'd helped turn my life from chaos to order. Where do you want this? He called from the doorway, carrying my small kitchen table. By the window, I said, where the light is. My phone buzzed again. A text from my lawyer. Final paperwork filed. You're officially clear of all their accounts. Congratulations. Prudence squeezed my arm. How does it feel? Scary, I admitted. Good, scary. We unpacked in comfortable silence, each item finding its place, each room slowly becoming home. No more leaky faucets, no more thin walls, no more waiting for the next crisis. Look what I found, Gideon said, holding up an old photo album. You can throw that away. You sure? It's your history. I took the album, flipped through photos of forced family smiles and fake harmony. My history is what I make from now on. The doorbell rang. My heart stopped. Pizza, Gideon said quickly. I ordered pizza. We sat on moving boxes eating pizza from paper plates. Prudence told stories about terrible tenants. Gideon shared office gossip. Normal conversation, normal life. My laptop dinged. A new email. From Mum. Don't open it, Prudence warned. I need to. The subject line read, Receipt. Dear Claire, your father and I received the final notice from the lawyer today. You've made your point. You've won. I hope you're satisfied with destroying this family. But since you're so focused on debts and payments, here's a receipt for every dinner I cooked, every ride to school, every birthday present. That's what family meant to us. Keeping score. Isn't that what you wanted? When you're ready to apologise, you know where to find us. Mum, I started laughing, couldn't stop. Claire? Gideon looked worried. I opened my spreadsheet, the one documenting every dollar I'd given them, added up the total one last time. 157,892, 43. Want to see my reply? I asked. They nodded. I typed, Dear Mum, here's my receipt. Second mortgage payment, $47,000, Maeve's bail and legal fees, $15,000, credit card bailouts, $42,000, utility bills, $23,892, emergency loans, $30,000 total, $157,882, but you forgot some things in your receipt. Cost of my self-respect, priceless, price of my freedom, everything I had, value of finally standing up, worth every penny. I'm not keeping score anymore. I'm just keeping my peace. Goodbye. Claire. Send. Brutal, Prudence whispered. Honest, Gideon corrected. I closed my laptop and looked around my new home. My furniture might be second-hand, my decorations sparse, but every inch belonged to me. I need plates, I said suddenly, and curtains, and... Tomorrow, Gideon said. Tonight, we celebrate. He pulled out a bottle of champagne. Prudence found paper cups in a box. 2 new beginnings, she toasted. To freedom, Gideon added. To peace, I whispered. The sunset painted my empty walls gold. Through the window, I could see my small garden where I'd plant flowers in spring. My flowers, my garden, my life. My phone stayed silent. No crisis calls, no guilt trips, no demands. Just peace. More pizza? Gideon offered. I smiled. A real smile, not the practiced one from family photos. Yes, and tomorrow, maybe dinner? Just us? His answering smile was warm. Just us. Prudence gathered her purse, heading home. At the door, she hugged me tight. You did it, kid. You really did it. I watched her leave, then turned back to my new life. Empty rooms waiting to be filled. Quiet spaces waiting for new memories. Clean pages waiting for better stories. And for once, the silence felt like a beginning, not an end.
Hello, everyone. I'm Loretta, and I currently live in a small annex attached to my in-laws' house, alongside my husband, Alex. While I stay in the annex, Alex lives in the main house with his parents. The annex, originally a simple project built by Alex's grandfather as a retreat, was not meant for long-term living, but I worked hard to make it a cozy, livable space. It's about the size of a standard room. Alex and I had lived in a regular apartment for the first 4 years of our marriage, but everything changed when his parents, who adore him, suddenly asked him to move back home. They expressed their longing for his presence with tears and heartfelt hugs, which tugged at Alex's heartstrings. Moved by their emotional plea, Alex made the decision to return to his parents' home, catching me off guard with the intensity of their bond. Alex and I met at work, where he started out as my subordinate. At the time, he still lived with his parents, and it seemed like his time with them had deepened their connection. Even after we got married and lived independently, I noticed that his attachment to his parents and the comfort of his childhood home lingered. His upbringing was one of pampering, where he was never asked to help with household chores, which explained his reluctance to share domestic responsibilities when we moved in together. When I suggested dividing household tasks equally, Alex hesitated and admitted he'd never really done them before. Every time I tried to get him involved, his initial enthusiasm would quickly fade, leaving me to do everything. This isn't for me, Loretta, he'd say. You're much better at it. You should just keep doing it. As both of us were working full-time, I was eager to split the chores, but over time, I found it less exhausting to handle everything myself rather than constantly try to get Alex to pitch in. Things shifted even more when I began working remotely. Alex was initially surprised to see me home all the time, but eventually, he got used to it, or at least I thought he had. The real turning point came when his parents made an unexpected visit to our apartment. They expressed a strong desire to live closer to him, which eventually led to our decision to move into their home. Throughout our relationship, Alex always preferred living near his parents. Whether it was choosing an apartment or a job, he prioritized being close to them, which often led to us relocating and even changing jobs. Since I worked remotely, the location wasn't an issue for me, but I quickly realized that Alex's choices often centered around his parents' needs. Once we moved into his parents' home, I naively believed things would get easier. When Alex's mother greeted me, she said, "Thank you for taking care of Alex all this time. From now on, I'll take good care of him. Loretta, you handle everything else." At first, I thought she was offering to relieve me of some duties, but I soon realized what she meant. Alex's mother took over all his personal care, cooking special meals for him, washing and ironing only his clothes, maintaining his shoes and belongings, and showering him with gifts. Meanwhile, I was left with all the household chores that didn't involve Alex, including cooking and cleaning for his parents and myself. Despite my full-time job, I suddenly found myself responsible for managing their entire household, along with maintaining the much larger family home. It became clear that Alex was now firmly back under his parents' wing, leaving me to juggle everything else on my own. This new arrangement left me feeling disheartened. While it seemed to bring joy to Alex and his parents, it offered no benefit to me. My responsibilities had only multiplied, and I found myself shouldering most of the burden. One day, as I was cleaning, my father-in-law approached me with a hesitant expression. "Loretta, I have a favor to ask," he began. Looking apologetic, he explained that he needed financial help. When I asked for clarification, he admitted that it was difficult for him to ask Alex for money. "Alex has worked hard," he said, "and it just feels challenging to ask him for financial contributions." This added another layer of complexity to our already uneven dynamic. Alex and I had previously agreed to split our expenses when we lived in our apartment. But over time, during shopping trips, Alex would often persuade me to pay for everything, whether it was groceries, alcohol, or clothes. When I hesitated, he'd accuse me of being stingy, sulking like a child. Despite these financial tensions, I found some relief in the fact that Alex mostly left me alone to manage my own life. That small sense of peace, however, quickly disappeared once we moved into his parents' home. Unlike Alex, his mother actively disrupted my routine. She'd barge into my workspace unannounced, tug at my clothes, and insist that I stop working to focus on household chores. The constant interruptions made it impossible to concentrate on my remote job. Frustrated, I confided in Alex, half expecting him to take his mother's side. To my surprise, he listened and promised to speak with her about the disruptions. I hoped this would lead to a reasonable compromise. However, Alex's idea of a solution wasn't what I had expected. Instead of addressing the issue directly, he proposed that I move into the annex, a detached space on their property. It was clear that he saw this as a way to separate me from his mother, rather than integrating us all into one harmonious household. Somewhat jokingly, I asked Alex if I could demolish the annex and build something new in its place. To my astonishment, he casually replied, "Go ahead, demolish it if you want." His offhand comment revealed a level of indifference that stung, but it also opened up unexpected possibilities. Taking him at his word, I threw myself into remodeling the annex. I cleaned, repainted the walls, and made the space my own. As I worked, I noticed that Alex never came to check on the progress. It became obvious that he had no intention of joining me in the newly renovated annex. This realization hit hard. Within the family dynamic, I was the outsider. There were moments when I felt truly alone, especially when they would go out to dinner without me or when I had to work late and missed family meals. These outings, usually organized by Alex's mother, seemed deliberately planned to exclude me. I couldn't help but wonder if she was hoping I would eventually leave. Yet despite the emotional distance growing between us, Alex gave me complete freedom over the annex, and I embraced it. I poured myself into DIY projects, installing shelves, choosing furniture, and creating a space that reflected my tastes. Interestingly, after I moved out, neither Alex nor his parents ever visited. They must have known about the renovations, but they showed no interest in my efforts. This lack of involvement only reinforced the feeling that I was no longer a true part of their family. Living away from the main house gave me a surprising sense of liberation. Without Alex's mother constantly hovering over me, I began to appreciate my newfound independence. The annex, now secure with new locks and a sense of privacy, became my sanctuary. No one, not Alex, nor his parents, could enter without my permission. I started to see the separation as a blessing, giving me space to reflect on what I truly wanted. Still, I knew that my mother-in-law wasn't one to back down easily. It seemed she had sensed my growing detachment, and I could feel that she wasn't done with me yet. Reaching my breaking point with her relentless behavior, I found myself at a crossroads, contemplating my next move. While I settled into the renovated annex, my mother-in-law's desperation to drive me away became more obvious. It started with small, petty acts, leaving garbage in front of my door instead of at the collection site. Sometimes, she'd host barbecues in the garden, purposefully leaving me out while ensuring the tempting smell of grilled meat drifted toward me. Though these petty efforts were annoying, they couldn't shake my resolve. Then one day, she called me to the main house under the guise of offering leftover meat and potatoes. Sensing something deeper was at play, I decided to go along with it. Upon entering the living room, I found her there, alone, with a smug expression. Dramatically, she slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a divorce paper. Her true motive revealed. She expected me to resist, confident that if Alex were to be involved, he'd obediently comply. All that remained was my agreement, and the divorce would be finalized with a simple visit to the city court. Her voice dripped with satisfaction as she said, "Isn't it time you gave up? There's no reason for you and Alex to stay married anymore. You're just a freeloading, unemployed woman. Get out." Though shocked by her boldness, her certainty fueled my own excitement. Without hesitation, I grabbed the divorce paper, smiling broadly as I exclaimed, "I'm heading to the city court right now." Thank you so much. The look of disbelief on her face was priceless. She had expected resistance, not enthusiasm. After submitting the divorce papers, I quickly packed up my belongings, feeling it was necessary to inform her of the completed process. I returned to the main house. I told her the divorce was final and that she was free to do whatever she pleased with the annex I had renovated. She was visibly surprised by my positive attitude, but still, she couldn't hide her relief. On the day I moved out, Alex and his father, finally realizing I was serious, seemed concerned. Are you really leaving? What will we do without you, Loretta? They asked. I smiled, thanked them for the use of the cabin, and explained that there was no longer a reason to stay married. The chapter was over. Soon after, I moved into a luxury apartment I'd had my eye on for a while. Once settled, my mother-in-law called me unexpectedly. Her tone was awkward, starting off casually before she shifted to a more serious topic, money. Alex told me you were giving his father $5,000 a month. Is that true? She asked. I confirmed her suspicions and took the opportunity to clarify that, contrary to her earlier accusations, I wasn't unemployed. In fact, I had left my previous job to become the president of a new company pioneering remote work systems. The surprise in her voice was evident. She had assumed I had no career at all. I quickly set the record straight. Sensing her curiosity, she pressed further, asking if my new role had increased my income. I offhandedly mentioned that my earnings were around $3 million, a slight exaggeration to avoid explaining the nuances of my finances. That's when the conversation took a turn. With that much money, could you help us out? She asked. Your father-in-law was laid off, but he kept it hidden. We've been surviving with the $5,000 you've been giving us, and neither Alex nor I knew about his job loss. Her words shed light on an earlier conversation I'd had with my father-in-law. His reluctance to ask Alex for money wasn't out of pity, it was a well-played move to manipulate me into financial support. While cunning, this revelation gave me a clearer understanding of their true intentions. They had been relying on me financially, subtly extracting $5,000 a month under the guise of shared expenses. Looking back, I didn't mind too much at the time, as it gave me the peace and quiet I needed in the annex. But now that I was divorced, I realized there was nothing binding me to Alex or his family anymore. It was time to fully embrace my independence. When I pointed out the disconnect between us, my mother-in-law's voice became desperate as she pleaded. That's not true. You're still family to me and Alex. Please, come back to us. I declined without hesitation, fully aware of the risk of being exploited again. There was no advantage in returning to a relationship that had left me drained. Alex and I were essentially strangers now, and it felt absurd for them to claim me as family after they had been the ones to push me away in the first place. I'm really enjoying my life on my own now, I replied. It feels a lot like when I was married, except now, I actually get to spend my money on myself. Back then, I was giving away $5,000 every month without even thinking about it. I much prefer my life as it is now. With that, I firmly said goodbye and ended the call, puzzled by why they thought I would ever want to return. For my mother-in-law, it must have been a last-ditch attempt. The reality was that Alex's salary wasn't impressive, and he had a habit of shirking responsibilities, frequently saying, "I can't do it," and handing tasks off to others. This was true both in his personal life and at work, which kept him stuck as a regular employee without any salary increases. With his father laid off and his mother a full-time housewife, they could no longer manage the upkeep of their large home. Eventually, they were forced to sell it and move into the very cabin I had renovated. While the space had been perfect for one person, I could only imagine how cramped and uncomfortable it must have been for all three of them living there together. Since then, I haven't given them much thought. My life now is filled with freedom, peace, and independence, everything I had been missing before. Hi, I'm Jessica, a 55-year-old financial planner. As I move through my morning routine, sorting through bills and budgets, I can't help but reflect on my life, a life deeply intertwined with my husband, Anthony. His magnetic charm and troubling gambling habits have transformed our marriage into a delicate balance of love and financial struggle. When I married Anthony, I knew about the debts he had inherited from his parents. His father, Mr. Jacob, now 70, and his mother, Emma, 66, have always had a reckless approach to money, a tendency they unfortunately passed down to Anthony. Despite the cautionary tales from friends and the whispers of doubt in my mind, I held on to faith in our partnership. I thought I could help Anthony regain control over his finances and navigate us through these turbulent waters. Each morning, I set aside money to gradually chip away at our mounting debts. The stark numbers on my spreadsheets tell a story of resilience. With diligence that would have made my mother proud, I tackle Anthony's debts, applying the financial lessons she instilled in me from a young age. Today is no different. I'm ready to face our financial struggles with unwavering determination. However, the burden of these financial obligations weighs heavily on me, and as I glance at our family photos lining the walls, I can't help but worry about what lies ahead. The dream of a peaceful retirement feels increasingly out of reach with every passing day. As I close my laptop and prepare for the day ahead, a flicker of hope remains, hope that my efforts will yield results. Hope that we can rise above the shadows cast by his family's past. It's this hope that fuels my fight for a brighter tomorrow. My mornings are often punctuated by phone calls from Anthony's parents. Mr. Jacob frequently reminisces about his old gambling days, lamenting lost opportunities while subtly hinting at a need for money. Emma echoes his sentiments, reminiscing about times when their finances were abundant. Their influence on Anthony is both undeniable and troubling. Today, the phone rings again. Anthony speaks in hushed tones, concern etched across his face. Mr. Jacob has suffered a minor stroke, and the news tugs at my heartstrings. Regardless of our struggles, they are still his parents. As Anthony hangs up, our eyes meet, his filled with a silent plea for understanding and support. We both know this will lead him to want to help them, not just emotionally, but financially. As the weeks roll on, Anthony's visits to his parents become more frequent. Each trip creates a greater distance between us, his mind clouded by the manipulative tales spun by Mr. Jacob and Emma. They paint a bleak picture of medical bills and living expenses they cannot manage on their pensions. I see the trap unfolding, but my warnings fall on deaf ears. Anthony finds himself caught between his loyalty to them and his responsibilities toward our future. Every conversation about finances turns into a battlefield. Influenced by his parents, Anthony pushes for more generosity and support. I stand my ground, advocating for prudence and reminding him of our own pressing needs and the debts we are still trying to manage. This ongoing struggle further strains our marriage. In this chapter of our lives, Mr. Jacob and Emma's influence looms like a shadow over our home. Their needs, whether real or exaggerated, are slowly draining the peace from our lives, turning every decision into a tug-of-war between past obligations and future stability. As autumn deepens, the leaves fall like a golden blanket, and Anthony's visits to his parents become almost daily rituals. Each departure is tinged with tension, each return cloaked in a heavy silence that suffocates our home, eroding the warmth we once shared. One evening, as daylight fades, Anthony comes back with a troubled expression, signaling bad news. He reveals another request for money. His parents' medical expenses are supposedly escalating. The urgency in his voice tugs at my heart, but a nagging doubt lingers in my mind. With a reluctant heart, I agree to yet another withdrawal, watching our savings dwindle like the autumn leaves. The pattern of requests becomes predictable, urgent, desperate, and increasingly large. Anthony's explanations grow vague, and his trips to the bank become more secretive. My suspicion intensifies, compelling me to uncover the truth behind these supposed medical emergencies. One crisp morning, driven by this gnawing doubt, I decide to follow Anthony. From a distance, I watch as he meets not only his parents but also familiar faces from his gambling past. Their interaction is animated, filled with the exchange of envelopes and hurried nods. It dawns on me that this isn't just about medical bills. It's a calculated manipulation exploiting familial ties to further a hidden agenda. Returning home, my heart heavy, the painful puzzle pieces fall into place. Anthony, once again entangled in the world of gambling, has succumbed to a scheme crafted by those he trusted most. As I sit alone in the dimming light of our living room, I realize I must prepare for the possibility of a deeper betrayal. This deception cuts deeper than any financial loss. It threatens the very foundation of our trust. One brisk morning, just before dawn, I notice Anthony is up unusually early. His movements are quiet, almost meticulous, a demeanor I haven't witnessed before. As he prepares coffee, I catch a glimpse of his hands trembling slightly, tension evident in his posture. The air feels thick, saturated with unspoken concerns. "Jess, we need to talk about something," he begins, avoiding eye contact. His voice wavers, a stark departure from his usual assurance. He reveals that he's discovered the savings account I've been maintaining, the one holding $300,000, set aside as our safety net. His gaze flits around the room, never quite landing on me, sending a chill down my spine. "What about it, Anthony?" I ask, striving to keep my voice steady. He swallows hard, and his words spill out in a frantic rush. "I need it, Jess. It's the only way I can finally settle everything once and for all." The room spins slightly as I digest his words. Betrayal cuts sharply, its edge cruel and cold. But I'm ready. Last night, after confirming my suspicions about Anthony's gambling, I transferred our savings to a secure online account, well beyond his reach, oblivious to my actions. He continues, "I'm taking the savings. I have to do this." His proclamation hangs between us, stark and definitive. I nod slowly, masking the tempest brewing inside me. "Okay," I reply quietly, watching as he grabs the keys to the safe and my wallet. He doesn't notice the absence of fear in my eyes. Hours later, the house is painfully silent. I find the divorce papers on the dining table, stark and official. The vault stands open, stripped of its contents. But it doesn't matter. The real money is safe, untouched. Sitting alone, I turn on the pet camera footage. On the screen, I see Anthony and his parents rifling through the papers and empty boxes, their faces etched with confusion and frustration. They don't understand. They never anticipated this move. As the sun climbs higher, casting light on the remnants of a life I thought I knew, I feel an unexpected relief. The betrayal, while painful, has not defeated me. It has freed me to begin anew, unshackled from the deceit that had unknowingly bound me for far too long. The morning sun spills a soft glow across the room, its warmth a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I sit quietly at the kitchen table, the remnants of Anthony's betrayal laid out before me, the empty safe, his missing wallet, the cold official divorce papers. Amidst the chaos, I cling to a secret that anchors my resolve. Earlier, Anthony had expressed his intention to leave, believing he could take our life savings with him. Little did he know that I had already moved the $300,000 to an inaccessible online account. The vault he thought held our future was empty, a fitting metaphor for the hollow shell our marriage had become. As he left, I remained composed, a silent observer to the unraveling of a life we had built together. Now alone, I activate the pet camera, not out of mistrust, but as a precaution to monitor our home while I'm at work. The screen flickers to life, revealing Anthony and his parents confronting the reality of their plan, the vault baron. Echoing their shock and disbelief, their expressions shift from confusion to frustration as they search every corner of the safe, unable to comprehend the emptiness they find. I watch, bitter satisfaction mingling with the ache of betrayal. They had not only underestimated my foresight but also my resolve. Now, with the truth laid bare and the future uncertain, I take the first steps toward independence. The legal groundwork for the divorce is straightforward. The evidence of his attempted theft is irrefutable. As I gather the documents and file the necessary reports, I feel the weight of the past years begin to lift. The betrayal intended to break me has, instead, liberated me. As I watch the morning light grow brighter, illuminating paths once shrouded in doubt and deceit, I prepare to move forward alone, stronger and unburdened by the weight of unshared secrets and broken promises. The house is quiet, a stark reminder of the void Anthony's departure has left. Yet within the silence lies newfound clarity, a resolve to reclaim what is rightfully mine, both financially and in spirit. I spend the morning at the lawyer's office, the crisp sound of pages turning as we review the divorce papers. With each signature, I sever another tie to Anthony. The evidence of his theft is meticulously laid out, copies of bank statements, the empty safe, and the video footage from the pet camera. It's all undeniable, and my lawyer assures me that the case for divorce and claims for emotional distress are strong. After the meeting, I drive home, the route familiar yet transformed, as if I'm seeing it all for the first time, as a new woman. I pull into the driveway, feeling the weight of my wedding ring. With a decisive motion, I slide it off. It feels heavy in my palm, laden with memories and broken promises. At home, I begin the process of reshaping my life. Financial documents are reorganized, personal accounts secured, and new investments planned. Each action is a step toward independence, a declaration of my ability to survive and thrive on my terms. I reach out to community groups, reconnecting with old friends and engaging with new ones. It's time to rebuild, not just my finances, but my social life, my personal interests, my inner peace. As the sun sets, casting long shadows across the garden I once tended with Anthony, I realize this is not just an end but a beginning. A betrayal intended to strip me of everything has instead paved the way for a future where I am the sole architect of my fate. The early morning light filters through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the kitchen where I now sit alone, sipping my coffee. The silence of the house, once heavy with betrayal, now feels peaceful and filled with potential. Today marks a significant chapter in my life, the finalization of my divorce from Anthony. With the divorce decree in hand, a document that officially ends our union, I feel a profound sense of relief. It's done. The legal battles, the painful revelations, all behind me now. I take a deep breath, allowing myself to truly embrace the freedom that comes with this new status. I spend the morning reorganizing my living space, removing remnants of Anthony's presence. Each item sorted and boxed feels like shedding layers of a past life. I donate some, sell others, and keep a few cherished memories that remind me of who I was and who I've become. In the afternoon, my son Stephen comes over. Seeing him walk through the door, a young man who has chosen to stand by me, reinforces the strength of our bond. We talk about the future, his plans, and my aspirations. Our conversation is filled with hope and mutual respect, far removed from the deceit that clouded recent years. Together, we decide to host a small gathering in the coming weeks, a celebration of new beginnings. Invitations are sent to close friends and family who supported me through this ordeal. It's more than a party. It's a statement that I am moving forward, embraced by a community that values truth and integrity. As the day winds down, I step out into the garden, where the last light of day caresses the blooms that have thrived despite the neglect. I tend to them, pruning and nurturing, much like I am doing with my life. This garden, like me, will flourish again, rooted in the strength and resilience that come from surviving the storm. The betrayal that once threatened to break me has instead shattered the chains that bound me. Now, I look forward to crafting a life filled with authenticity and joy, building a future on my terms, one day at a time. When I discovered that my daughter had secretly taken $500 from my purse, I felt a mix of anger and betrayal. In an attempt to teach her a lesson, I punished her by locking her in her room without food. However, when my husband, Peter, found out, he exploded in rage, throwing a cup of tea in my face right in front of our 9-year-old son, Jacob. It was a shocking moment that pushed me to call 911 for help. But before the authorities arrived, something unexpected occurred that changed everything. My name is Julia, and I want to share my journey, a story of resilience, pain, and ultimately empowerment. As I sit here in my small apartment in Atlanta, I often reflect on the choices I've made and the life I've led, especially in my role as a receptionist at a bustling office. The long hours can be exhausting, but this job allows me to provide for my two beautiful children, Emma and Jacob. Emma is now 15, a typical teenager who constantly tests my boundaries. Just the other night, I caught her texting late into the night, her face glowing in the darkness. I once thought this phase would pass, but it seems to intensify each day. "Mom, I need this for school," she insists whenever I question her choices. I remember feeling just as overwhelmed during my teenage years, and I struggle to find the balance between understanding her and enforcing discipline. Jacob, my sweet boy, is 9 years old, quiet and observant. He has an uncanny ability to sense when something is off. On tough days, he wraps his little arms around my waist and reassures me, "It'll be okay, Mom." His innocence gives me strength, reminding me of the joy that can still exist amid the chaos. Then there's Peter, my husband, in his late 30s. It's hard to believe how our lives have changed. He was once charming, full of dreams and aspirations. But over time, those dreams shifted, and so did he. Peter became controlling, criticizing my every decision. From household management to parenting, I learned to stay silent during our disagreements to maintain peace. One evening, after a long shift at work, I came home exhausted, my feet aching and my mind spinning. The familiar scent of dinner filled the air, but chaos reigned in our small apartment. Jacob was playing on the floor, while Emma sat on the couch, glued to her phone, with the TV blaring in the background. "Emma, could you please help out a bit?" I asked, trying to muster patience. She barely glanced up, muttering, "I'm busy, Mom." I sighed, bracing for the battle ahead. After putting my things away, I went to my purse for grocery money, only to find it $500 short. My heart sank. I knew exactly how much I had withdrawn for the week. "Hey, Emma, have you seen any money in my purse? It seems to be missing," I asked casually. Her expression shifted to guilt. "Oh, I meant to tell you I took some for a school project," she admitted, her voice hesitant. "I didn't think you'd mind." Anger and disappointment surged through me. "You took it without asking." "Emma, that's not okay. It's about trust and respect." "But it was just money," she protested, frustration creeping into her tone. "You're locking me in a room for this? It's unfair." "This isn't just about punishment," I replied firmly. "It's about teaching you responsibility." Emma rolled her eyes, throwing her hands up. "This is so dumb. I have a life, you know?" As our argument escalated, my patience wore thin. "This isn't just about money, Emma. It's about learning to ask before you take. I'm your mother, and I need you to understand that." Just then, Peter stepped through the door, his eyes darkening at the sight of our tension. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Emma took money from my purse without asking, and now she's locked in her room," I explained, trying to keep things calm. Peter scoffed, shaking his head. "You're punishing her for a little cash? Seriously, you're being too controlling, Julia." His words cut deep. "It's not about the amount, Peter. It's about honesty and trust. You make everything about rules and punishments. Maybe if you weren't so harsh, she wouldn't feel the need to hide things." He shot back, pacing the room. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "This is about teaching our daughter the right values." "Right values?" he sneered. "You think you're perfect? You're the one turning my kids against me with your strictness." My heart raced as I tried to defend myself. "I'm not turning anyone against you. You're doing that by being unreasonable." The argument escalated quickly, voices rising as emotions boiled over. I felt trapped, like a caged animal. Then, in a split second, everything changed. Peter grabbed a cup of tea and threw it in my face. The scalding liquid shocked me, and I stumbled back, reeling from confusion and disbelief. "Mom," Jacob cried from the hallway, fear in his wide eyes. I quickly wiped my face, trying to shield him from the ugliness of the moment. "I'm fine, honey. Please go back to your room," I urged, my voice shaking. As Jacob retreated, I turned back to Peter, my heart pounding. "You just threw tea at me," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I didn't mean to, Julia," Peter said, his eyes wide with shock. "No, you did. You crossed a line tonight." The weight of reality crashed down on me, and I knew this couldn't continue. I had to protect myself and my children. As I sank onto the couch, the sting of Peter's actions still fresh on my cheek, I realized this was a turning point. I had to take action. The fear that had crept silently into our home could no longer be ignored. I needed help. That night felt like an unending nightmare. After Peter stormed out of the room, I sat in silence, my heart racing as I replayed the moment in my mind. The sharp sting on my cheek served as a painful reminder that the man I once loved had become a stranger. The next morning, I awoke feeling drained, the events of the previous night haunting me. I knew I couldn't continue like this. I had to do something, not just for myself, but for my children. After sending Emma and Jacob off to school, I sat in the kitchen, staring blankly at my cup of coffee, pondering my next move. That's when I decided to reach out to my closest friend, Hannah. We'd known each other for years, and I knew she would understand. "Hannah, I need your help," I whispered into the phone, my voice trembling. "Julia, what's wrong?" she asked, her tone instantly filled with concern. "It's Peter. He threw tea on me last night in front of Jacob. I can't stay here anymore." "Julia, pack your things and come stay with me. You and the kids. You can't go back to that place," she urged. "I can't just leave everything behind," I stammered, glancing around my small kitchen. "What about the kids? What will I tell them?" "Tell them the truth, that you're keeping them safe. Please, just come here. We'll figure it out together." My heart raced as I hung up the phone. Was I really going to do this? Leave everything behind? But as I thought about Peter's rage, the look of fear in Jacob's eyes, and the atmosphere of dread that had become our norm, I knew I had no other choice. I packed a bag with only the essentials, taking just what we needed. I hesitated for a moment, staring at the small apartment that had been our home for so long, but I understood I couldn't stay. When Emma and Jacob came home from school, I was ready. "Kids, we're going to stay at Aunt Hannah's for a while," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why?" Emma asked, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Because we need some time away from Dad," I replied softly. "It's just temporary, I promise." Emma's gaze shifted from suspicion to a look of understanding. "Is it because of what happened last night?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I admitted, my heart aching. "I need to make sure we're all safe." The drive to Hannah's felt surreal. The kids sat quietly in the back seat, confusion and fear evident in their eyes. I wanted to reassure them, to promise that everything would be okay, but the words escaped me. All I could do was keep driving. Hannah met us at the door, her arms open wide. "You're safe now," she murmured, pulling me into a warm embrace. "You're safe here." In that moment, I broke down, the weight of everything crashing over me, the years of fear, isolation, and pain, all the things I had kept hidden for so long. As I cried in Hannah's arms, I felt something new stir within me, a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could start anew. The following weeks passed in a blur as I adjusted to our new reality. I focused on creating as normal a life as possible for Emma and Jacob, keeping them engaged with school and activities. Hannah was a lifesaver, helping me navigate the chaos of leaving, providing support and encouragement when I felt like crumbling. One afternoon, while sitting on Hannah's porch sipping tea, I had a revelation. I couldn't hide forever. "I'm going to file for divorce," I said quietly, almost more to myself than to anyone else. Hannah looked up, her face radiating pride. "You should, Julia. It's time." The process was grueling, filled with legalities and confrontations I hadn't anticipated. Each encounter with Peter brought back the old fear. His attempts to manipulate and intimidate me felt like echoes of a painful past. But I kept my head high, refusing to back down. I had to do this for myself and my children. After months of battling, it was finally over. In the courtroom, I listened as the judge pronounced, "Full custody of the children is awarded to Mrs. Julia Walters." Relief washed over me, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. I had done it. I had protected my kids and reclaimed control of my life. As I left the courthouse, I looked up at the sky, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. I was free. The following months became a time of rebuilding. I found a small apartment, just big enough for the three of us, and began piecing our lives back together. The kids adjusted slowly, but as the days passed, I watched them start to thrive. Emma joined the school's debate team and made new friends, while Jacob discovered a love for basketball. Spending hours practicing at the local park, I landed a job at a small marketing firm, where my colleagues were kind and supportive. Balancing work and home life on my own wasn't easy, but with each passing day, I felt stronger. The fear that once gripped my heart began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. One evening, as we sat around our tiny kitchen table eating dinner, Emma looked up at me and said, "Mom, I'm glad we left. You seem happier." I smiled, my heart swelling with love. "I am, sweetie, I really am," and I meant it. For the first time, I felt truly free, free to be the mother my children deserved, free to become the woman I was meant to be. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living. Our lives weren't perfect, but they were ours, and that was enough. That's where our story finds its heart, in a place of hope and freedom. We survived, we overcame, and now we were finally free. Days turned into weeks, and I began to settle into a routine I hadn't imagined before. Each new morning brought a little more lightness, the chains of the past loosening bit by bit. Though moments of doubt and flashes of fear still lingered, they became fewer and farther between. Emma and Jacob seemed happier too. Their laughter filled our small apartment, a sound I hadn't realized I'd been missing for so long. One day, as I dropped Jacob off at basketball practice, I spotted a familiar figure standing by the court. It was Peter. My heart raced, old fear surging up like a tidal wave. But then I looked at Jacob, his face lighting up as he ran to join his friends. And I knew I couldn't let Peter's presence ruin this. I squared my shoulders and approached him. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice calm and steady. Peter turned, surprise flickering across his face. I wanted to see Jacob." "You can't just show up unannounced," I replied firmly. "If you want to see him, we can set up a time, but you don't get to disrupt his life like this." Peter blinked, as if he hadn't expected me to stand my ground. "I'm sorry," he murmured, glancing down. "I'll call next time." "Please do," I said, turning away before the conversation could drag on. I didn't need his apologies. I needed boundaries, and I wasn't going to let him cross them, not anymore. As I drove away, a strange sense of calm settled over me. I had faced Peter and held my own. I wasn't the same scared woman I had been before. I was stronger now, and I wouldn't let him take that from me. The following weeks became a whirlwind of school events, work deadlines, and family time. Slowly but surely, we began to build new memories free from the shadows of the past. One Saturday, while we sat in the living room watching a movie together, Jacob turned to me and asked, "Mom, do you think we'll ever go back?" "Back?" I echoed, frowning at Jacob. "To how things used to be," he murmured, staring down at his hands. A pang shot through my chest as I understood what he meant. "No, sweetie, we're not going back," I said gently. "But that's a good thing. We're moving forward. We're building something new together." He nodded slowly, digesting my words. "I like it better this way," he whispered. "Me too," Emma chimed in, surprising me. She rarely spoke about Peter or the past. I glanced over at her, but she was focused on the screen, her expression calm and serene. My heart swelled with pride. They were healing. We were healing. As time passed, life settled into a comforting rhythm. I immersed myself in my work, finding joy in small victories and nurturing new friendships. The kids continued to flourish, their smiles growing brighter with each day, and gradually, the fear that once gripped me began to fade. One afternoon, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Peter. I hesitated, staring at the envelope for a long moment before finally opening it. The letter was brief, filled with apologies and promises to change. But as I read the words, I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just a sense of closure. I folded the letter neatly and tucked it away. It didn't matter what Peter said or promised. He was a part of my past, and I was focused on the future. Months passed, and as the anniversary of our departure approached, I decided to do something special for Emma and Jacob. I packed a picnic and took them to a park we used to visit when they were younger. Before everything had turned dark, we spread out a blanket and spent the afternoon playing games, enjoying sandwiches, and reminiscing about happier times. "Do you remember when we used to come here?" Emma asked, surveying the park with a soft smile. "Yeah," Jacob said, his eyes sparkling. "Dad would push us on the swings." The mention of Peter tightened my chest, but I forced myself to smile. "Yes, I remember, but now we're making new memories, just the three of us." Jacob grinned and nodded. "Just us." As the sun began to set, I looked at my children, their faces glowing in the soft light, and felt a deep sense of contentment. We had come so far, we had endured so much, but we were still standing, still together. That night, after the kids were tucked in bed, I sat on the porch sipping a cup of tea, letting memories wash over me. The fear, the pain, the uncertainty, they were all still there, buried deep, but they no longer controlled me. I was in control now. I had my children, my freedom, and a future that was ours to shape. This is where our story truly concludes, not in bitterness or regret, but in hope. We survived, we healed, and we are finally free. The road ahead may still be uncertain, but I know we'll face it together with courage and love, because we've learned that no matter how dark things get, There is always light waiting on the other side. During a family drive, our 5-year-old daughter suddenly said, "Dad, the girl in the trunk is asking you to let her out." I saw my husband's face tighten instantly. His reaction was telling. Even if he tried to pretend otherwise, he glanced at our daughter through the rearview mirror, fear etched in his expression. "That's a scary thing to say. You shouldn't make up such stories," he replied, attempting to brush it off. I stared at him from the passenger seat, my eyes sharp. "Maybe we should pull over at the rest area," I suggested. It had been 5 years since we got married, and while I had always been the supportive wife, helping him through his busy work life, I knew that my daughter's unsettling comment wasn't a coincidence. Something deeper was at play, and it was about to be revealed. Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca, and I married Patrick when I was 30. A year later, our daughter Doris was born, and she has been growing up healthy and full of energy. Now 5, she's the light of our lives. Despite our busy schedules, our little family was filled with joy, at least, that's what I had thought. "How about we go to the zoo next Sunday?" I suggested one afternoon. "Yay, I want to see the giraffes," Doris squealed, her excitement filling the car. I smiled, feeling a warmth inside as I listened to my husband and daughter chat happily. Patrick had always been a caring husband since our dating days. Even after Doris was born, he continued to be an attentive father. On weekends, he eagerly joined in on family outings, and I often thought how lucky I was to have him by my side. But as I basked in these happy moments, I had no idea our peaceful days were on the verge of unraveling. "Huh? You're being transferred to a different department?" I asked one evening, taken aback by the news. "Yeah, company policy. They want me to get experience in different areas," Patrick explained, looking exhausted as he walked in the door. His new assignment was in one of the busiest departments, which meant he would have less time for family. I could see the weight of the news pressing on him. "Daddy, does this mean you won't play with me anymore?" Doris asked, her voice soft and worried. Patrick sighed, placing a hand on her head. "I'll do my best. Sweetie, we'll still go to the zoo. I promise." Watching them together made my heart ache. I could sense the strain Patrick was under, even if he tried to hide it. This transfer wasn't just a job change, it was a shift in our family's entire dynamic. I wanted to reassure him, but there was only so much I could do. "Please don't overwork yourself," I urged, knowing how he tended to bury himself in work when stressed. I didn't want him to burn out, but my fears quickly became a reality. At first, Patrick managed to balance his hectic schedule with time for us, but within a month, everything changed. His late nights became the norm, and family outings dwindled to nothing. The man who used to cherish every moment with Doris was now barely home long enough to say goodnight, and when he was home, his temper was short. "Can you take a day off next Sunday? Doris misses you, and you've been working so hard," I gently asked one evening. "Who do you think I'm doing all this for? Should I just stop going to work and get fired?" He snapped back, frustration spilling over. "I'm just worried about you," I said softly, but he didn't listen. "That's not your concern. By the way, make sure we have enough money for next week's client dinner." I was stunned. He had become a man I barely recognized, angry, distant, and spending recklessly under the guise of work. Yet, I didn't feel anger, only a deep concern for his well-being. I wanted to believe the man I loved was still in there somewhere, buried beneath the weight of his responsibilities. Months passed, and things only worsened. Patrick came home just to sleep, and Doris, feeling abandoned, grew quieter, her bright spirit dimming. I tried to come up with ways to bring him back, but the harder I tried, the more elusive he became. Then tragedy struck. My mother, who had been ill for years, suddenly passed away. "No, Mom," I cried, grief overwhelming me. She had been my only remaining parent, and the loss hit me like a tidal wave. I sat frozen in disbelief when I received the call, unable to process the pain, but Patrick's reaction was worse than I could have ever imagined. "Do I really have to go to the funeral?" he asked coldly, his voice devoid of empathy. I stared at him, stunned. She was my mother, our family, and he couldn't even muster a shred of compassion. His indifference was like a knife to my heart, and in that moment, I realized the man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who had become a stranger. What are you saying? Of course, you have to go. It's a family funeral, I snapped, my voice tinged with disbelief. Don't get mad at me. Ugh, why does this have to happen now? I had plans, too, Patrick responded, rolling his eyes with irritation. His complete lack of remorse left me stunned. I had expected him to at least offer some comfort, maybe a hug or some words of support. In the past, he would have done so without hesitation. But now, as he sighed and mumbled in frustration, he was a far cry from the man I had once envisioned spending my life with. Patrick didn't lift a finger to help with any of the funeral arrangements. I ended up handling everything alone. On the day of the service, Patrick remained distant, barely saying a word. As soon as it ended, he muttered, "It's over now, right? I'm heading home first." Without offering any assistance in cleaning up or even acknowledging the emotional weight of the day, he left. At first, I was confused by his cold indifference, but by that point, I was too exhausted to feel anger. All I felt was an overwhelming sense of disappointment. No matter how overworked or stressed he might have been, there was no excuse for how he acted at my mother's funeral. "Mom, Doris will help you," my daughter said sweetly, sensing my frustration. Together, we finished tidying up, her little hands doing what they could to lighten my burden. Afterward, I decided to stop by my parents' house for a moment. It was close by, and I felt a deep pull to spend a little more time remembering my mother. Doris and I arrived, and as I unlocked the door, the familiar scent of home greeted us, filling my heart with a bittersweet ache. But something strange happened the moment we stepped inside. "Mom, wait," Doris suddenly said, her face serious. Before I could respond, she bolted toward the back room. I had taken her to my mother's house many times, but I had never seen her act like this before. Intrigued, I hurried after her. I found Doris standing by the old dresser in my mother's bedroom, pulling open the second drawer from the bottom with purpose. Inside, she found something, a hand mirror, delicate and antique. "Mom, Grandma wants you to have this," Doris said, holding up the mirror. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The hand mirror had been one of my mother's most cherished possessions, something she rarely used and kept hidden away. I hadn't seen it in years, and Doris had never even known it existed. "What? How did you know this was here? And what do you mean Grandma wants me to have it?" I asked, astonished. "When Grandma was sleeping earlier, she told me that you were sad and asked me to give this to you," Doris explained innocently. Her words sent chills down my spine. There was no way she could have known about the mirror or where it was kept. My heart raced, unsure whether to be spooked or comforted. In disbelief, I decided to test her, asking her about things she couldn't possibly know about tomorrow's dinner plans, thoughts I hadn't spoken aloud. During the funeral, my daughter, Doris, had been able to answer questions she couldn't possibly have known the answers to. Each response was spot on, leaving me baffled. Somehow, she had this uncanny ability to know what people were thinking. "Wow, Doris, you know everything," I said, stroking her head, still trying to process it all. Mysterious abilities were something I thought only existed in stories, but here it was real and right in front of me. She beamed with pride, her hands on her hips, as if she were fully aware of just how remarkable she was. "That's right, Doris knows about Dad, too," she added with a sly grin. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart skipping a beat. What she told me was shocking, unbelievable, even, and utterly unforgivable. A few weeks later, after my mother's funeral, I decided to test the waters. One morning, as Patrick was heading out the door for work, I casually mentioned, "By the way, Doris and I are visiting my friend next Sunday in the morning." Patrick stopped in his tracks, frowning. "Really? Oh no, I'm off that day." "That's too bad," he said, his voice dripping with artificial concern. I smiled to myself, masking the emotions simmering just beneath the surface. Now that I knew the truth, I felt nothing but indifference toward him. On that Sunday, I took Doris out for a short drive, spending about an hour away before heading back. "Dad's over there," Doris said, pointing toward the garage as we returned. The shutter was down, and I could feel the tension rising. Taking a deep breath, I approached and knocked. "Patrick," I know you're in there. Open up, I called out. From inside, his voice sounded flustered. Rebecca, I thought you and Doris had plans. It got cancelled. If you're going somewhere, we'd like to join you. I could hear him hesitating. My intuition told me exactly what was going on behind that door, but I stayed quiet, letting the moment unfold. Doris wants to go for a drive, I added, using our daughter's innocent wish to force his hand. Reluctantly, Patrick opened the garage, and we set off on a drive together. I sat in the passenger seat, watching him from the corner of my eye, knowing full well that our marriage had already reached its end. Those happy days with him were long gone. Hey, did you know Doris has a special power? I finally said, breaking the silence as we merged onto the highway. Patrick furrowed his brows, dismissing my words with a nervous laugh. What are you talking about? That's silly. Daddy, the girl in the trunk wants you to let her out. Doris suddenly chimed in from the back seat, her voice unwavering. I didn't miss the way Patrick's face paled at that moment. He stiffened, his hands tightening on the wheel as he glanced at our daughter through the rearview mirror, panic creeping in. What a creepy thing to say. Don't make up stories, he muttered. But it's true, Doris insisted. Maybe we should pull over at the rest area, I suggested, watching him closely. Patrick shot me a panicked glance. Huh? No need for that. It's just a kid's joke. Doris has a mysterious power, you know, and it's pretty hot today. If someone's really in there, it could be dangerous, I added calmly. Realizing he couldn't brush off my logic, Patrick grudgingly steered toward the rest area. When we arrived, I left Doris in the car, the cool air conditioning keeping her comfortable, while Patrick and I stepped out. You said there's nothing in there, right? Let's check, I said, my tone firm as I gestured toward the trunk. Patrick hesitated, clearly on edge, but knowing he had no choice, he reluctantly opened the trunk. As soon as the lid lifted, a young woman leapt out, her face flushed from the heat. I recognized her instantly, Isabella, the woman Patrick had been cheating with. Wait, it's not what it looks like. She's just a colleague, Patrick stammered, his face pale and sweaty. Really? And does your colleague often hide in the trunk of your car after work? I asked, crossing my arms. I reached into my bag and pulled out a piece of paper, holding it up for both of them to see. And what about this? A little drive date on Sunday. Their faces turned as white as ghosts. I had printed out their flirty email exchanges as evidence, and there was no denying it now. Thanks to Doris, I had found out everything. The truth had come out a few weeks before, when Doris, in her innocent way, had told me, Daddy's been spending a lot of time with Isabella. I'm sad because she's taking him away from me. Her words had made me suspicious, and after some careful digging, I found undeniable proof of his affair. That fake plan I told him about? It was all part of my strategy. I had no intention of letting him get away with it. And here we were, standing by the open trunk, his lies unraveling. Hey, it's unfair to go through my phone without permission, Patrick protested, his body tensing in response to my sarcastic words. His absurd defense made me laugh out loud. I had thought his constant late nights were due to work, but clearly, they were spent with his affair partner, Isabella. No doubt the money he claimed was for business expenses had been funding their dates, while he took out his frustrations on me. Who's really being unfair here? I shot back, pulling my phone from my pocket. By the way, I've been recording everything since this all started. Their faces blanched as I calmly revealed the extent of my preparation. Actually, I knew this day would come, so the moment we got in the car, I hit the record button, and that's not all. The evidence I've collected isn't just messages or this video. I installed hidden cameras in the house and garage. Isabella, I know everything about you, too. Both Patrick and Isabella turned ghostly pale under the weight of my words. My fury was directed at both of them. Patrick had betrayed me, but Isabella was just as guilty, fully aware that he was married yet still choosing to continue the affair. I had done my homework. Isabella was a 25-year-old junior employee in his department, and the messages between them revealed how shamelessly they carried on despite knowing the harm they were causing. I'm sorry, Rebecca, Patrick stammered, clearly caught off guard by how thoroughly I had cornered him. I looked at them both with cold disdain. The man who once commanded my love now whimpered pathetically, but my anger wasn't so easily swayed. I won't forgive either of you, I said, my voice firm. You'll both be paying for this, with alimony. Realizing the gravity of their situation, they crumbled before me, sinking to their knees. In the end, I divorced Patrick. The recordings, the texts, and the video evidence I had gathered all paid off. They were both ordered to pay me $300,000 in compensation, and Patrick was required to pay $500 a month in child support. Their affair became public knowledge at work, and it wasn't long before the scandal turned their professional lives upside down. With whispers circulating among their colleagues, both of them eventually resigned, their reputations shattered. From what I've heard, they're now struggling under the burden of compensation, their once reckless lives in ruins. As for me, life has never been better. Doris and I enjoy our peaceful days together, and I continue to shower her with love. She is, after all, my daughter with a remarkable gift. Jessica's jaw dropped as she stood on her doorstep, staring at the stranger in the cheap suit. I'm sorry, what did you say? She asked, struggling to grasp his words. My great-aunt Amanda left me an inheritance, he said, flashing a patronizing smile. Yes, ma'am, it seems your aunt was quite well off, though most didn't realize it. Funny how the elderly can surprise us, isn't it? Jessica let out an incredulous laugh. Aunt Amanda wealthy? You must have the wrong person. That woman lived like a beggar. Be that as it may, he replied with a nonchalant shrug. Your presence is requested at the reading of her will this Friday at 3 p.m. sharp at McGrady & Sons law offices downtown. Don't be late. With a tip of his hat, he turned to leave. Wait, Jessica called, but he was already striding briskly to his car. She closed the door slowly, her mind reeling. An inheritance from Aunt Amanda? It made no sense at all. Seated at her small kitchen table, Jessica nursed a cup of coffee, reflecting on her relationship with her great-aunt. They had never been particularly close. Amanda was a mean-spirited, miserly woman who rarely offered a kind word. Still, Jessica had made an effort over the years, visiting regularly, helping with chores, bringing meals, and planning birthday celebrations. No matter how poorly Amanda behaved, Jessica always wore a patient smile. Her husband, Stephen, had a far lower tolerance for the old battle axe. He had only met Amanda a handful of times, once before their wedding and a couple of times after, but that was more than enough. The way she lived and her snide remarks about him convinced him there was no reason to endure her miserable company. Jessica sighed, pondering the possibility that the lawyer's claims might hold some truth. Could Amanda have been secretly wealthy all along? She tried to imagine what an inheritance might mean for her life. Maybe she could finally quit her second job waiting tables on weekends. Perhaps she could enjoy a decent night's sleep for once. Glancing up at the clock, she swore under her breath, if she didn't hurry, she'd be late for her shift at the diner. She gulped down the rest of her coffee, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. She needed to call Stephen from the bus to share this perplexing news. Fortune smiled upon her as she found a seat on the crowded bus. Pulling out her phone, she dialed Stephen's number, hoping he was feeling well enough to talk. Hey, babe, he answered groggily. What's up? You won't believe what just happened, Jessica began. A lawyer visited me, claiming Aunt Amanda left me an inheritance. An inheritance, can you believe it? Stephen let out a low whistle. Wow, the old bird had some hidden wealth after all. Yeah, I'm supposed to attend the will reading on Friday afternoon. I don't know what to make of it. Well, that's great news, Stephen replied, though his enthusiasm felt forced. Maybe you can finally take some time off work. You deserve a break. Jessica smiled sadly. If only it were that simple. We'll see. How are you feeling today? Any updates from your mom? Stephen's mother, Emma, worked at Mercy Hospital and had been trying to get him seen by specialists for his ongoing health issues. His sensitive constitution made it nearly impossible for him to keep a job for more than a day or two, often resulting in panic attacks and ER visits. Jessica had been working herself to the bone to afford his expensive vitamin regimens and herbal supplements. Oh, you know, the usual, Stephen sighed dramatically. I don't know, hon. Maybe it's time to accept my fate as an invalid. Reproducing would probably be irresponsible with my weak genes anyway. Jessica bit her tongue, suppressing the ache in her heart at the thought of the baby they had planned to try for this year. "Don't say that," she replied softly. "You're going to get better, I know it. Just keep resting and let your mom work her magic, okay? I'll visit you tomorrow at the hospital." After exchanging "I love you," Jessica hung up the phone and gazed out the bus window, trying to block out Stephen's negativity. She had to remain hopeful. Perhaps this inheritance was the stroke of good luck they so desperately needed. The next morning, Jessica arrived at room 242 in Mercy Hospital, excited to see Stephen. She knocked twice and entered with a bright smile, but it quickly faded as she saw him scowling from his bed. "Hey babe," she said cheerfully, leaning in for a kiss, but he turned his head away. "You didn't put on any makeup today. Seriously?" he asked irritably. "Every other wife on this floor looks like a model when they visit, and I'm stuck with a hack." Jessica recoiled as if struck. "Stephen, how can you say that to me? You know how exhausted I am from work. I barely have time to." Yeah, you're a big martyr. I get it." He cut her off, waving his hand dismissively. "When's that inheritance money coming in again?" "Hopefully soon, so you can actually make yourself presentable." Blinking back tears, Jessica turned and fled the room without another word, stumbling down the hallway until she collapsed on a bench near the elevators. Was this really what her marriage had come to? With her head in her hands, she overheard two male patients strolling by. "I told my old lady I had to stay here through the weekend for tests," one chuckled to the other. "Really? I've got a poker game lined up with the orderly and enough booze to drop an elephant." "Same, bro," his friend replied with a grin. "What the wives don't know won't hurt them, right? They think we're saints for being stuck here." Jessica felt nauseous. Did all men behave this way behind closed doors? She shook her head firmly. No, not her Stephen. He would never deceive her like that. He was just cranky from being cooped up. Taking a deep breath, she dried her eyes and stepped out into the bright sunlight. Tomorrow was the big day, and she needed to focus on that. Friday morning dawned crisp and clear. Jessica woke up early, determined to make the apartment spotless before Stephen returned home on Monday. She still couldn't quite wrap her head around the idea of receiving an inheritance. Her family had never had two nickels to rub together while she was growing up, but maybe this was the fresh start they needed to finally get ahead. Arriving at the lawyer's office an hour ahead of schedule, Jessica was ushered into a plush waiting room by a friendly receptionist. "Coffee?" the young woman offered. "Yes, please," Jessica replied gratefully, sinking into an emerald green armchair that probably cost more than her entire living room set. Just as she was stirring in her cream and sugar, her cell phone buzzed incessantly. "Stephen," she muttered, guessing he was calling to ask about the inheritance. She answered, rolling her eyes good-naturedly. "Oh yeah, Stephen, can you blame me? This is huge. Han, spill the beans already." "I won't know anything for at least another hour," she explained patiently. "I promise, as soon as I have a number, you'll be the first to know." As the minutes ticked by, Jessica's anxiety intensified. What would she do if the inheritance was life-changing? What if it wasn't? When her name was finally called, her heart leaped into her throat. "Miss Jessica, please come with me." The plush carpet muffled her footsteps as she was led into a stately office lined with law books. An older gentleman in a three-piece suit rose from behind a massive oak desk to shake her hand. "Miss Jessica, I'm Bernard McGrady. So glad you could make it today." "Thank you for having me," Jessica replied automatically, taking a seat across from him. "I have to admit this is all quite overwhelming. My aunt wasn't exactly forthcoming about her finances." Mr. McGrady chuckled. "No, she certainly had a reputation for being tight-lipped, but I can assure you, your great-aunt Amanda was a woman of considerable means." He slid a file folder across the desk to her. Jessica opened it with trembling hands and nearly fell out of her chair when she saw the number printed on the page. This has to be a mistake," she gasped. "There are too many zeros. It can't possibly be $6, 5 million. Mr. McGrady smiled. "Let me assure you, there's no mistake." Jessica clutched the folder to her chest, her head spinning. $6, 5 million. It was more money than she had ever dreamed of. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in her throat. Wait until Stephen heard about this. With shaking fingers, she pulled out her phone under the desk and typed a text to her husband. Inheritance is $6,500. Can you believe it? In her excitement, she didn't even realize she left off the last 3 crucial zeros before hitting send. Unable to sit through the rest of the meeting, Jessica made hasty excuses about needing to process the shocking news and fled the office. Clutching the legal folder containing her new future, she had to see Stephen right away and share this incredible, life-altering development. He was going to absolutely flip. Bypassing the bus, she hailed a cab and barked out the address to Mercy Hospital, fidgeting the whole way there as the city blocks crawled by. When the car finally pulled up to the main entrance, she threw a wad of bills at the driver, not even bothering to wait for change. Taking the stairs 2 at a time up to the 2nd floor, she burst with excitement to reveal their new fortune to the love of her life. As she approached room 242, however, the sound of familiar voices made her pause outside the door. It was Stephen and his mother, Emma. Deep in conversation, Jessica knew she shouldn't eavesdrop, but something compelled her to remain still and listen. And the stupid cow actually bought it, Stephen said, his tone dripping with derision. Can you believe she thinks I'm actually sick? Like I'd ever waste my time in this hellhole if I didn't have to? Emma laughed. You've got her wrapped around your finger, so naive. That one, I still can't believe you married so far beneath you. Tell me about it. Stephen groaned. But did you hear the best part? Aunt Amanda left some money. Once she gets that transferred over to my account, I'm dropping her like a bad habit. Let her keep playing nurse and housekeeper to some other sap. Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. She blinked rapidly, convinced she must be having some sort of nightmare. There was no way this could be real, but the cavalier laughter coming from Stephen and Emma confirmed the devastating truth. Her entire marriage, her entire life with this man, had been a lie. Unable to listen to another word, she turned and fled, not even noticing the hot tears streaming down her cheeks. She ran until her lungs burned and her feet ached. When she finally stopped to catch her breath, she found herself by the East River, staring out at the murky water. As she watched the swirling currents, Aunt Amanda's voice echoed in her head, "That boy is a lazy freeloader who's going to bleed you dry." The old woman had warned Jessica after meeting Stephen for the first time. "Mark my words, Missy, you're making a huge mistake." At the time, Jessica had dismissed it as the ramblings of a bitter old spinster. But now, with her heart shattered into a million pieces, she saw the truth with stunning clarity. Aunt Amanda had been right all along, and by some miracle, she had ensured Jessica would have the means to break free before it was too late. Squaring her shoulders, Jessica turned her back on the river and strolled purposefully down the sidewalk. She had calls to make and divorce papers to file. As for Stephen, he would be in for the shock of his life when he came home on Monday to an empty apartment. In the meantime, Jessica decided she would stay with her best friend, Tara, for a few days before embarking on a much-needed solo trip to the Hamptons to heal. For the first time in years, as the warm June sun beat down on her face, Jessica felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her life wasn't ruined after all. Perhaps this was just the start of an incredible new chapter. She couldn't wait to find out. 3 days later, Stephen hobbled to the door of their apartment, prescription pain meds in hand. "Honey, I'm home," he called out mockingly. "Where's my inheritance check?" Silence greeted him. Frowning, he looked around in confusion, noticing the bare walls and empty shelves for the first time. A single sheet of paper lay on the kitchen counter. "Dear Stephen," it began in Jessica's familiar loopy script. "By the time you read this, I'll be long gone. And in case you haven't figured it out yet, I know everything. I know you've been faking being sick to avoid working. I know you and your mother have been laughing at me behind my back. And I know you were planning to take my money and run. Well, the joke's on you. Because that inheritance wasn't $65,000. It was $6. 5 million, and every penny of it is mine. I've already filed for divorce. You have 30 days to collect your things and get out of my apartment. Have a nice life. Jessica." Stephen let out a strangled yell of shock and rage as the letter fluttered to the floor. He kicked a chair in frustration, swearing up a storm. How had he underestimated her so badly? He thought he had her under his thumb. as he sank to the ground in defeat. Jessica was worlds away, stretched out on a beach chair with the sea breeze ruffling her hair. She sipped a fruity cocktail while watching the waves roll in, contemplating the cozy beach bungalow she had just put an offer on. Everything happens for a reason, Aunt Amanda used to say. Jessica raised her glass to the sky in a silent toast, thanking her wise aunt for the lesson and the inheritance. Hello, everyone. I'm Alyssa, a 40-year-old former pharmacist turned housewife, taking a moment to reflect on the winding roads my life has traveled. Standing by the window, I watch the last rays of sunlight fade into twilight, and my thoughts drift to my parents, both accomplished doctors, and the deep impact they've had on me. My story begins in a moment of profound reflection, following the heartbreaking loss of my beloved father, Harry. From a young age, I was immersed in a world filled with the compassionate hum of medical discussions, the urgency of patient care, and the profound responsibility that comes with healing. While my parents carved their paths in medicine, I chose to explore the pharmaceutical realm. This decision wasn't an act of rebellion. It was a compromise, a way to remain connected to the medical field without overshadowing my parents. Growing up in such a nurturing environment instilled in me the values of hard work, dedication, and empathy. These principles guided me through college and into my career, shaping my choices and interactions with the world around me. However, as life often does, it took unexpected turns. My journey took a pivotal detour when I met Oscar at a company-sponsored charity event. He was unlike anyone I had ever known, charismatic, supportive, and genuinely understanding of the pressures I faced in my profession. Our friendship blossomed into a deeper connection, and soon we found ourselves dreaming of a future together. As I reminisce about those early days, I can't help but recall the simplicity of our relationship, filled with promise and mutual respect, a stark contrast to the complexities that would later unfold. Let me take you back to that fateful night when I first met Oscar, a turning point in my life. Introduced by a mutual friend at a charity ball hosted by my pharmaceutical company, the evening was adorned with elegance and a shared commitment to making a difference. Oscar's charm was magnetic, his quick wit complemented by a warm demeanor that seemed to brighten the entire room. As we danced beneath the soft glow of the chandeliers, he shared stories of his life, ambitions, and unique perspective on the world. Though he worked in finance, a field worlds apart from my medical background, his passion for his career was palpable, and it was refreshing to connect with someone so devoted to their craft. Our bond deepened rapidly, and within months, we were inseparable. Oscar proposed on a chilly December evening, just a year after we met. It was a beautifully intimate moment, one that felt like the beginning of a fairy tale, with the promise of a lifetime together. I felt elated. I envisioned a life brimming with love, support, and respect, the very foundation upon which I believed our marriage would thrive. However, the first hurdle appeared even before we exchanged vows. Oscar's mother, Eileen, was a formidable presence with a penchant for the extravagant and a critical eye that seemed to judge me based on my financial standing rather than my character. Her approval, which appeared crucial to Oscar, hinged on what our union could bring to her social status. Despite these warning signs, I was deeply in love, and as the saying goes, love can often cloud one's judgment. I convinced myself that any initial disapproval would fade once Eileen recognized the authenticity of our relationship. With Oscar by my side, reassuring me through every moment of doubt, I chose to focus on the positives, the love we shared and the future we were building together. In my heart, I clung to the belief that love could conquer all and that the challenges ahead were merely obstacles on the path to a lasting marriage. Little did I realize, these were just the early signs of the trials that would test both the strength of our bond and my own resilience. Reflecting on those days now, I see how much I still had to learn about the complexities of love and family dynamics, lessons that would shape my life in ways I never anticipated. Our wedding was a joyful celebration, a day filled with happiness and promise. As I walked down the aisle and looked into Oscar's eyes, I felt a surge of hope for our shared future. Yet, the initial bliss of married life quickly gave way to the realities of everyday challenges we had not fully foreseen. As we settled into our new life, it became clear that Oscar's interest and abilities in managing household responsibilities were far less than he had led me to believe. Despite his many assurances during our courtship, His participation in our domestic life was minimal, often half-hearted. I found myself shouldering the majority of the chores alongside my demanding job. Whenever I encouraged him to take on more responsibilities, he would either procrastinate or perform tasks so poorly that I felt compelled to redo them. This growing disparity in our expectations created a rift between us, fueled further by the frequent interventions of Oscar's mother. Eileen had a way of inserting herself into our lives, often criticizing my management of our home and suggesting that I should be more attuned to Oscar's needs, regardless of my own. Her comments, which Oscar never challenged, painted a clear picture of where his loyalties truly lay. Eileen's criticisms extended beyond our household dynamics. She frequently belittled my family background and career choices. Her relentless comparisons between my achievements and those of her friends in more traditionally esteemed professions were both hurtful and infuriating. To make matters worse, Eileen often approached us for significant financial assistance, framing her requests as urgent needs to uphold her extravagant lifestyle. Each time I tried to discuss these issues with Oscar, hoping for his support or at least a conversation about setting boundaries, he consistently sided with his mother. His typical response was that I was misinterpreting her intentions or that I should be more understanding of her circumstances. This pattern of dismissiveness gradually eroded the trust and respect that once formed the foundation of our relationship. The strain on my marriage reached a breaking point when my father fell ill. Harry, my father, had always been my source of strength and wisdom. When he shared the news of his terminal cancer, it felt as if the ground beneath me had shifted. Every moment spent with him became precious, a bittersweet countdown I wished I could pause. Even in his weakened state, he continued to share stories and lessons, each one a treasure I clung to amidst the turmoil brewing at home. During this emotional time, my relationship with Oscar hit a tipping point. His lack of empathy and support during my father's illness laid bare the stark reality of our partnership. One particularly difficult night, after returning home exhausted from the hospital, I found Oscar and his mother discussing their financial future, plans that blatantly assumed my father's wealth would somehow support them as well. Their casual conversation, held so carelessly in the open, was a chilling revelation of their expectations and sense of entitlement. When my father passed away, the grief was overwhelming, but it also brought clarity. Among his documents, I discovered that he had left me a significant inheritance, a final act of love and trust amounting to $10 million. This inheritance was meant to secure my future. But when Oscar and his mother learned of it, their true colors became unmistakable. They had already begun making plans to use this money, operating under the assumption that it would be theirs to control. Their sense of entitlement was the final straw. I was confronted not only with the loss of my father but also with the betrayal of my husband and the intrusion of his mother into the most private aspects of my grief and legacy. This painful realization propelled me toward decisions I had postponed for too long. Driven by the need to reclaim my life and honor my father's memory in a way that reflected his teachings and integrity. As the executor of my father's estate, I swiftly took steps to secure the inheritance, ensuring that all legal protections were in place. Confronting Oscar and his mother was inevitable. I was no longer the compromising wife, but a woman determined to defend her father's legacy and her own future. This moment marked a turning point where the sorrow of loss intertwined with my resolve to no longer accept disrespect and manipulation. While my father's passing was a profound loss, it also gave me the strength to confront the toxic elements of my life, setting the stage for much-needed change. As the echoes of my father's legacy resonated within me, I faced the harsh reality of my marriage and the manipulative dynamics that had taken root with Oscar. The inheritance was not just a financial boon. It became a catalyst for a long-overdue reckoning. The day of the confrontation remains vivid in my memory. It was a crisp autumn morning, and the air in our home felt tense, charged with unspoken truths and impending upheaval. Over breakfast, Oscar and his mother casually discussed their plans for the inheritance money, talking about lavish purchases and investments as if I weren't even present. Their brazen entitlement and the dismissive way they treated me in my own home ignited a fire within me. A fire fueled by grief, betrayal, and years of accumulated disrespect. I stood up from the table, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, drawing startled looks from both of them. My voice was calm but firm as I declared that I could no longer tolerate this disrespect or live in a facade of a marriage that had been unbalanced and unfair from the start. The shock on their faces was almost satisfying, a stark contrast to the usual disregard they showed toward my feelings. I informed them that I had taken legal steps to protect my inheritance, as it was my right and my father's wish for this legacy to be mine alone. The notion that they had no claim over it seemed to finally pierce the bubble of entitlement they had been living in. I also presented them with a divorce petition, a tangible symbol of my resolve to reclaim my life and dignity. The ensuing argument was intense. Accusations flew, harsh words were exchanged, and the true nature of our relationships was laid bare. Oscar and his mother tried to manipulate the narrative, portraying themselves as victims, but I stood my ground, backed by the law and my unwavering determination to no longer be a part of their deceitful games. Once the storm of that confrontation had passed, I took immediate action. I changed the locks on the doors, ensuring that any further attempts at manipulation would be kept, both literally and metaphorically, outside my sanctum. This act of locking the door was symbolic. It was not just a barrier for them but a gateway to my new beginning. The divorce process, though emotionally draining, proceeded more smoothly than expected. Oscar's true character continued to show through his actions and demands. But with each legal victory, I felt a piece of my old self returning. The independence and peace I had longed for were finally within reach, and with every step I took, I felt more empowered and more like the woman my father had always encouraged me to be. With the divorce finalized and my inheritance securely in my name, I embarked on the first steps of my new life. The world now felt different, filled with possibilities that had once been overshadowed by the turmoil of my marriage. I decided to use part of my inheritance to pursue long-held dreams that had been set aside. Travel topped my list, a chance to explore the world through new eyes, not as an escape but as an exploration of what life could offer when unshackled from others' expectations and demands. I also revisited my passion for pharmacy, not to return to my previous job but to contribute in a meaningful way. I established a scholarship fund in my father's name for students aspiring to enter the medical field. This initiative honored his memory and the values he instilled in me: compassion, dedication, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. As the days turned into weeks and months, I felt my spirit rejuvenate. I reconnected with old friends and forged new relationships, people who appreciated me for who I was, not for what I could provide. My home, once a battleground of familial obligations and marital discontent, transformed into a sanctuary of peace and creativity. I took up painting, a hobby I had always wanted to pursue but never had the chance. Each stroke on the canvas celebrated my freedom, a colorful testament to the new chapters unfolding in my life. The most significant change, however, came from within. The journey through grief, betrayal, and renewal taught me a vital lesson about the importance of self-respect and the courage to make difficult choices. I learned that while we cannot control every aspect of our lives, we can decide how to respond to the challenges we face. I chose to stand up for myself, to reclaim my life, and in doing so, I discovered a strength I never knew I had. As I look forward to what the future holds, I do so with optimism and independence. I am no longer bound by the shadows of the past but illuminated by the lessons they provided. My father's legacy lives on through the choices I make and the life I lead, a life of integrity, purpose, and enduring hope. As I close this chapter of my narrative, I want to express my gratitude for sharing this journey with me. Remember, it's never too late to seek a better tomorrow.